So this lesson is on midpoint. Midpoint, as you know, means the middle. So our job is to find the middle of a segment, a line segment. Since Connor's 2 years old, Olivia is 10 years old. Caroline's age is in the middle. How old is she? Well, you could sit here and say, okay, Connor's 2, Oliver, sorry, is 10. So let's see, that'd be 3, 9, 4, 8, 5, 7, 6. Caroline is 6. There is an easier way to do this because what if Connor was 2 and Oliver was 87? You wouldn't want to have to sit here and do that from 2 to 87. So there is a way that you can find the middle. If you'll take Connor's age and add Oliver's age to it, you get 12. Now how can I get to a 6? Half it, divide it by 2. And that gives you the middle. So you take your starting point and your ending point and you add them together and then divide it by 2. And that'll give you the middle every time. So this is your midpoint formula. Now this is as it applies to math, and we're normally talking about points on a graph. So don't get so worried about these subscripts right here. This just says if I'm trying to find the midpoint between these 2 points, I take my 2 x's and I add them together and divide by 2. And then I take my 2 y's and I add them together and divide by 2. And that will give me the middle point. What are other words that mean midpoint? Middle, halfway, and another one is equidistant. It means they are equidistant from a certain point. So let's see what this looks like in terms of a question. What is the midpoint of 1, 4 and 5, 2? Now you could get a piece of graph paper out and some rulers and plot some points and count, but that's a lot of time. And then if you just try to wing it, we don't do a really good job at drawing a beautiful graph that's all evenly spaced and straight lines. We're not that great at. So graphing these is not an exact method to find the midpoint, but using the midpoint formula is. Now remember, your midpoint formula was x plus x and then half it, and y plus y and half it. So when I look at my points, remember your point is x, y. So the x's come first. So I'm going to take the x value of my first point and add to it the x value of the second point and divide them by 2. And then for my y value, I'm going to take the y value of the first point and add the y value of the second point and then half it. So what's 1 plus 5? That's 6, and 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 4 plus 2 is 6, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So the point 33 is the midpoint of 1, 4 and 5, 2. Find the middle of line AC. Now we could try to kind of eyeball it, but we can use this graph to get us our exact point. So what are the coordinates for A? Remember, coordinates are x first and then y. X is your horizontal distance and y is your vertical distance. So we start at the origin and we try to find our horizontal distance. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but it's negative. So this point is -7, comma, now how far up do we go? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's a positive 5 because it's going up. Now we need the points for C. So how far over to the right does C go? And it goes 3. And then how far down does C go? And it goes down to -6. So now I have my 2 points. So now I can use my midpoint formula. So I take my x's from both points and add them together. So -7 plus 3 over 2, comma, 5 plus a -6 over 2. Okay, add these together. So -7 plus 3, this is where your sign rules are going to be really, really important. That's a negative 4. And then 5 plus a negative 6 is a negative 1. And then I can clean this up. That's going to give me a negative 2, comma. I can't do anything to negative 1 over 2. So it's a negative 1/2. So that is my midpoint. Now let's check them out. Negative 2, comma, negative 1/2. So negative 2 would be this way, negative 2, and then down a half. So they're saying that right there is the midpoint. That would have been extremely difficult to just try to eyeball, and that's why you always want to use the formula to work it out exactly. On a coordinate plane, First Citizens Bank is located at 817, and BB&T is located at -12, -16. If Bank of America wants to build a bank midway, and that's your key word that we're going to box in, between the two, where should they build? So if Bank of America wants to build midway between First Citizens and BB&T, then we need the midpoint. So I'm going to take my two x's, so that's 8 plus -12 over 2. And then I'm going to take my y's. 17 plus a -16 over 2. 8 plus a -12 is a -4 over 2. And 17 plus a -16 is a +1 over 2. So this one reduces to -2, comma, 1/2. So that is the midpoint in between those two banks. Michael's house is located at 1215. Brianna's house is located at 60. If they meet halfway, that's how we know we're finding the midpoint. What will the coordinate be? So again, I'm going to take my x's, 12 plus 6 divided by 2, and my y's, 15 plus 0 divided by 2. So 12 plus 6 is 18, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. 15 plus 0 is 15, and 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. So there are my coordinates. R is the midpoint of PS. Q is the midpoint of RS. P is located at 810. S is located at 12, -6. What are the coordinates of Q? I'm going to put a star over the one we want. Now, a lot of people miss with this one because they don't take the time to read. They're going to find the midpoint of the 2 points that were given, and they're going to circle that answer. But if you find the midpoint of P and S, what are you finding? That's R. I don't want R, I want Q. But do I need to find R in order to find Q? And the answer is yes. So let's find the midpoint. So let's do 8 plus 12 over 2 and 10 plus a -6 over 2. So 8 plus 12 is 20, and 20 over 2 is 10. And 10 plus a -6 is 4, and 4 over 2 is 2. So 10, 2. And you'll see that that is an answer. They expect you to do that. They expect a lot of people to not take the time and read, but we want the coordinates of Q. So now what? Well, now I have to find the midpoint of RS to give me Q. So I'm going to be using that and that coordinate. So 10 plus 12 over 2, those are my x's, and 2 plus a -6 over 2, those are my y's. So 10 plus 12 is 22, and 22 over 2 is 11, and 2 plus a -6 is a -4, and -4 over 2 is a -2. So 11, -2, which is C. So again, that's not difficult. You just have to do the midpoint formula twice. But the big kicker there is to read. Okay, R is the midpoint of segment PS. Q is the midpoint of segment RS. P is located at -2, -8. And S is located at 1410. What are the coordinates of Q? So again, this one's set up the exact same. We've got to find R first, and then we'll find Q. So to find r, I'm going to do my x plus my other x over 2, and my y plus my other y over 2. So negative 2 plus 14 is 12, and 12 over 2 is 6, and negative 8 plus 10 is a 2, and 2 over 2 is a 1. So 6, 1, which is r. So now I have to add, I'd find the midpoint of r and s. So 6 plus 14 over 2, and 1 plus 10 over 2. 6 plus 14 is 20, and 20 over 2 is 10. 1 plus 10 is 11, and 11 divided by 2 is going to be 5.5. And so that answer is C. Given the right triangle ABC, find the midpoint of the longest side of the triangle. How do you know what side is the longest side of a right triangle? Well, the word hypotenuse should pop in your head. Hypotenuse is the side that's always opposite the right angle. So here's my right angle. Opposite that right angle is my hypotenuse, and this is always the longest side. So if you can't tell, find your right angle and go across from it. So all I need to do is find the midpoint of A, B. So I need the coordinates for A. So let's see, this is a negative 1, there's negative 2, so this is negative 3, and it looks like it's up 2 blocks. And then if I look over here at B, remember x comes first, it looks like it goes right 5, and then it comes down negative 1. So now I'm going to take my x's and add them, so negative 3 plus 5 over 2, and 2 plus a negative 1 over 2. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2, and 2 over 2 is 1. 2 plus a negative 1 is 1, and 1 over 2 is a 1/2. So it looks like it's A. Okay, now this one takes it a step farther. It says, given the vertices 0, 4, 3, 5, and 1, 1, what is the midpoint of the longest side of the right triangle? Well, we said in number 7 that the midpoint was always opposite the right angle. The problem with number 8 is I don't know where my right angle is, so I don't know between which 2 points is my longest side. So I have to graph this first. So given the vertices 0, 4, so remember this is my x and this is my y, so this means I don't go any right, left, but I go up 4. And then I'm going to label him 0, 4. And then 3, 5, so 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so that's 3, 5. And then 1, 1 would be right here. And then very carefully draw your triangle, and you can see that your right angle is right there, which means your hypotenuse is this side right here. So I'm finding the midpoint between those 2 points. All those steps have to be done so you can tell which 2 points you're finding the midpoint between. So my x is 3 plus 1 over 2 and 5 plus 1 over 2. 3 plus 1 is 4, 4 over 2 is 2, 5 plus 1 is 6, and 6 over 2 is 3. So 2, 3, which is B. Okay, M is the midpoint of PQ. Q is located at negative 9, 4, and M is located at 6, negative 3. What are the coordinates of P? And for kids who don't read this really carefully, they're going to see the word midpoint. They're going to see the 2 coordinates that I gave you, and they're just going to find the midpoint between those 2 points. But if you actually draw out what's happening here, you're not looking for the midpoint. It says M is the midpoint of PQ. So here's P, and here's Q, and here's M. I give you the coordinate for Q. He's at negative 9, 4. But then the weird thing is I give you the coordinate for M. I give you the midpoint. So if you find the midpoint between these two, you're finding that spot right there. And that's not what I'm interested in. I want P. Okay, well, P is going to be some sort of XY. So we're going to use the midpoint formula and just fill in what we know. Now, if I was going to do the midpoint formula, I would do this plus this, and I would divide it by 2, and it would equal that. So let's set that up. So x from here plus my x from way over there divided by 2, and that should give me a 6. Now to solve this, well, I'm solving for x. That's a big divide by 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply both sides by 2 to make that go away. So I have x plus a negative 9 equals 12. Now to solve for x, since that's a minus 9, I'm going to add 9. And I get x equals 21. So that is the x coordinate of my p-value. Okay, so now let's set it up again, and let's find the y coordinate. So now I'm going to take my y plus my y, divide it in half, and I should get a negative 3. So y plus 4 over 2 should give me a negative 3. To solve this, since that's divided by 2, the first thing I'm going to do is multiply by 2. Makes those cancel. Y plus 4 falls down. Negative 3 times 2 is a negative 6. Then to solve for y, I'm going to subtract 4. And that gives me a negative 10. Which means the coordinates for P are 21, negative 10. So you're still using the midpoint formula, but you're not using it to find the midpoint. You're using it to find one of the endpoints. Miss Williams' desk is located at negative 5.2. The wireless internet box is halfway between her desk and the floor. If the box is at 8, negative 8, what are the coordinates of the door? Okay, well, let's figure this out. We've got a desk. The internet box is halfway between the desk and the door. So I have the desk and the door, and the internet box is halfway in between. It says her desk is located at negative 5.2. The wireless internet box is halfway between her desk and the door. The box is at 8, negative 8. So the box is at 8, negative 8. What are the coordinates of the door? So this is what I don't know. Okay, so I'm not going to find the midpoint. I already know what the midpoint is. I want the endpoint. So I'm going to set up my equation. X plus x over 2 should give me that. So negative 5 plus x over 2 should give me an 8. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to make that go away. Negative 5 plus x equals 16. Add 5. X equals 21. Now let's do the y's. So I should have y plus y divided by 2 should give me negative 8. So 2 plus y over 2 gives me a negative 8. Multiply both sides by 2. 2 plus y equals a negative 16. Subtract the 2. Gives me a negative 18. So the door is located at 21, negative 18. And number 11, the center of a circle is at 7, 3. One end of the diameter is located at 4, 5. What are the coordinates of the other end point? So I have a circle. Circle has a center. Diameter, is that the diameter? No, that's the radius. The diameter goes all the way through it. Now it says the center of the circle is at 7, 3. One end of the diameter, and it could be either end, is located at 4, 5. And it wants me to find the other one. So we'll let him be xy. So again, I'm not finding the midpoint, but I'm going to use the midpoint formula to help me find it. So I'm going to take my x and my x from my endpoints. So 4 plus x, divide them by 2, and they should give me 7. And then I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. 4 plus x equals 14. Subtract 4 from both sides, x equals 10. Now I'm going to set up my y's. So the y from my first endpoint plus the y from my second endpoint divided by 2 should equal 3. Multiply both sides by 2. 5 plus y equals 6. Subtract 5 from both sides. Y equals 1. So my other endpoint is 10, 1. You had any trouble with any of these, feel free to go back through. Okay, number 12. There's a road between town R and town S. Town R is located at 4, 5. The halfway point between the roads is 6, 3. What are the coordinates of town S? This is another one to practice. So we have town R and town S. Town R is located at 4, 5. The halfway point, that's my midpoint, is 6, 3. And I'm looking for S. So again, I'm going to set up my endpoints. So 4 plus x over 2 equals 6. Multiply both sides by 2. And subtract 4. And then set up my y's. So 5 plus y over 2 equals 3. Multiply both sides by 2. Subtract 5. So town S is located at 8, 1. So the midpoint formula is pretty straightforward, but they can ask you some pretty tricky questions. Remember the triangle one with the hypotenuse, the right angle that you have to find to figure out what your hypotenuse is. And these, like number 10, 11, and 12, where you are given the midpoint, but you have to use the midpoint formula to find an endpoint. So just be real careful, take your time, read, and always draw it out.